The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
And welcome to those of you watching on iRacing Live, and welcome to coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV. I am James Pike, and I am joined by my colleague Brian Macklin and our lovely and talented producer in the booth, Cisco Scaramuza. And tonight we come to you from the capital of the Southern Commonwealth, Richmond, Virginia, and the Richmond International Raceway for round 9. 36 in this 2017 championship. This is an action track in every sense, as they have so branded themselves over the past 10 to 15 years, Brian. And I think especially with the extra heat in the daytime and the sunlight, you will see multiple grooves around this place, just like you did in the Cup race on Sunday.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As this track heats up and as the rubber really starts to build up around this racetrack, you're going to see these drivers searching around for a grip to try to get the fastest way around this racetrack. And I think you're going to see it pretty early on in this race. We already see a little bit of rubber built up on the bottom of the track from where these guys are practicing. So I certainly imagine we're going to see these guys searching around from the very beginning. It should be a very exciting race here tonight.
Interesting to see what unfolds during the race, and I think especially how some of our top drivers in the point standings rebound. There were a lot of folks that had some really tough days. David Washington ran into trouble last week at Bristol, as did Dylan Jones. David Comstock had a little bit of an issue too, so I'm going to be curious to see how those drivers rebound. Still decent amount of points on them, and I think especially for Washington, he still got a 45-point lead over Dwayne Vincent early on in the season. But you don't want runs like that to become the norm. You want that to kind of clip away as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. But fortunately for David Washington, he's already got 3 wins on the season so far, so he is locked into the playoffs and he has nothing to worry about. Having that one bad race last week at Bristol is not going to kill his season. But as you mentioned, you don't want that to become the norm. You want to establish a rhythm and really get your season on the right path as you get closer to the end of the regular season, and set yourself up for what should be a pretty exciting playoff once we get back to this track here at the end of August, beginning of September.
The last race before the playoffs under the lights at Richmond. Always a fun one here. But going to be curious to see what happens here with qualifying as well. We mentioned Dylan Jones and David Washington struggling last week at Bristol, still being near the top of the point standings. Washington, your points leader. Surprise, surprise. Jones and Washington currently hold the fastest 2 times in qualifying. So I suppose the folks at Aegis probably have got their stuff figured out and sorted all well again, at least up to this point.
Yeah, we weren't sure what was going on last week at Bristol, with the exception of Eberhard. There really wasn't a lot of speed out of those guys last week, but like you said, it looks like they've got things going back in the right direction, and we've also got to pay attention to a little bit of a rivalry we saw last night that involved Anthony Nabarro and Daniel Eberhard. They surprisingly enough, are starting bumper to bumper as of right now. Nabarro is 8th and Eberhard is 9th, so it's true what they say in NASCAR, and it's true here as well. These guys seem to find their way to each other anytime they're having a little bit of an issue with each other.
Yeah, just to note for those who weren't here, Nabarro and Eberhard got together. Nabarro hit the wall late in the race while leading. Eberhard went on to win the race. Nabarro was not happy afterwards, so we'll watch for afters here tonight at Richmond. But we'll go ahead and take some time to unload the starting grid for you. Dylan Jones managed to hang on to the pole, so he'll start first, followed by David Washington, his teammate and the points leader, in second. Lionel Kalisto with, I believe, his season's best run of 3rd on the charts. Then Brandon Bowie will start 4th. Jeff Ward in the number 89 machine will begin from the 5th position. Stefan Marinak starts 6th. Trevor Ravallo starts 7th. Nabarro and Eberhard 8th and 9th. And then Andrew Fari-Niars rounds out your top 10.
Carl Shed will start in the 11th position here tonight, and to his outside, Jose Gonzalez in the number 26 Meatball Machine. He starts 12th. CJ Lavere is 13th. Nick Silver, off of one of his best runs on the season last week at Bristol, he starts 14th, looking to back that run up. Shane Ewing will start 15th. Then we have Thomas George in 16th, Mike Kelly 17th, Nelson Rivera 18th, Austin Coop 19th, and Dwayne Vincent is in 20th.
The number 91 machine of Steve Gottschalk starts from 21st this evening. A.J. Browning joins him on the outside of row 11 and 22nd. Then Keith Medeiros begins from 23rd. Scott Simley starts 24th. Ross Cato in the Ben Shapiro Show machine start off from 25th this evening. 26th belongs to the 34 of Sean Boundy. 27th is where you'll find the 43 STP machine of Doug Roth. Jason Lester starts 28th. Randy Yoakum 29th. And Sean Casto rounds out your top 30.
31st, and the last person to take a time here tonight is Seth Fowdy in the number 31st position. The rest of these guys all will take a provisional. The first one on provisional is David Comstock. I was watching his qualifying lap. He had a bit of an issue. He hit the wall, so his lap did not count. He'll start 32nd. Then we have Stephanie Lessentine will start 33rd. Jason Jacoby 34th. Joseph Tice 35th. Then Corbin Hemstreet, John Abbott, Bruce Ackerman, Eric Arnold, and Douglas Wyatt. That wraps up your 40-car field here tonight at Richmond. And James, this is sure to be a very exciting race. I think we're going to see these guys move around really quickly here and try to search around for some grip.
Indeed. Give you a look at our track facts before we go green here. We're going to go for 180 laps this evening, and at 3/4 of a mile a lap, you're going to complete 135 miles by the time you take the checkered flag. You got 14 degrees of banking in the turns here at Richmond, 8 on that curved D-shaped front straight, 2 on the back straightaway. And I think it's also worth noting that storyline from very early on. Comstock having issues in qualifying and having to come from 32nd on the grid. How will that play into things? We'll have to keep our eyes on it and see what happens. But happy to have you with us here on LSRTV for another Monday night of RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking Action. As Dylan Jones will lead the field off of turn 4 and get ready to make things happen momentarily. Going to be a lot of fun, I think, Brian.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And back to what you said, we're going to have to keep our eyes on that number 40 machine of David, or 42 machine of David Comstock. I apologize. He's starting 32nd. He had a pretty fast lap in practice. He was 7th fastest in practice, so we know he's got some speed. Going to have to wait and see what he's able to do and see how well he can climb up through this field and see if maybe he can do what we saw a couple of those guys do on fresh tires yesterday, really making the fresh tires the priority throughout the race and working their way through the field pretty easily.
Yeah, we've seen drivers throughout the course of this season so far find ways to get up through the front of the field, but I think it's the same thing that we've said every weekend. Patience, 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 patience. We know Comstock can get it done on the short tracks, won at Martinsville, so we'll have to watch him as we get the green flag at the front of the field. Round 9 is underway, and off and away goes the 35 of Dylan Jones, ahead by about a car length and a half as they go into turn 1. Everybody getting down to the bottom pretty quickly, almost surprisingly there. Here comes David Washington, though. He's going to look right underneath his teammate, makes it happen easy. Jones almost slid up the track too far because Kalisto got underneath him, and by the time we complete our first lap, Jones started on the pole, will slip to 3rd.
Yeah, I think Jones had a problem coming off of turn 2. It almost looked like he got really tight in the middle of the corner and had to really check up in order to not hit the wall. And in doing so, that opened the door for his teammate David Washington and Lionel Kalisto to make that move. So he's up to speed now. He looks like he's okay. He's in 3rd, but there's a battle right behind him going on right now. That's Brandon Bowie and Jeff Ward. Man, these two have had a couple of pretty good battles over the last several weeks, and they're at it again here. As you see Ward on the bottom trying to take that position away, but Bowie is doing good on the outside line right now. He's able to hold him off, but it looks like he's going to lose that advantage as they head to 3 this time. Ward's got that inside line working pretty good.
Both of those drivers have consistently been in the top 10, and then they make contact. Bowie gets turned around, and he collects the 96 car with him, so should be a caution, I would think, coming. Not yet. Not yet. They're going to keep him on the apron and say that it's not an obstruction in the track. We'll bring the replay up for you, but we stay green. So big trouble from the 96 in for Bowie early on in this race. They'll have to find a way to rebound. I would presume that it's going to be lucky dogs for both of them to get their way back into this race.
Yeah, absolutely. They're right ahead of the race leader, David Washington, right now. They're only about a half a straightaway ahead of them. So if they can't get a caution here in the next several laps, I would imagine they might be in jeopardy of going a lap down. This is a little bit of a lucky break for both of them because there's a cause caution rule here in this series where if you bring out the caution, they penalize you. And if you bring out a second caution, you have to park it for the night. So the fact that there was no caution as a result of that incident, it helps both of these drivers because they don't have that against them already this early on. So good for them as far as that's concerned. However, we got to look at the action going on right now around the track. The top 5 has gotten pretty spread out as a result of that. You've got to go back around. It looks like Dwayne Vincent, Carl Shedd, Nick Silver, those guys have a little bit of a battle going on for just outside the top 5. Nick Silver is hanging on, trying to work his way towards the front. He's right behind Trevor Rapallo in 1 and 2.
Yep, hunting. Silver's there, and you've got Rapallo there, your Daytona winner from the start of the season as well. But want to go back a little bit, I guess for Anthony DeBarro and for Brandon Bowie, yes, you don't have the one of two causes against you at this point, but you've also got all of that time to make up, and you are praying for a yellow at some point because you're not going to have a shot to get back into this. The good news, though, is that since we are on a short track and Richmond can get a little bit racy at times, I don't think it's going to be forever until we see one. Might have a green flag run here for a while, but at some point, I think you're going to see a yellow before too long.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick Silver, though, just made the move on Trevor Rapallo, and he's going to take that position away, so you'll move Nick Silver into that 6th position, and now he's got a little bit of ground if he's going to catch up to Andrew Farnars, as he is about a second and a half ahead of him right now, so he's got his work cut out for him. But there's another battle going on right behind these guys. Daniel Eberhardt is trying to work his way up through, as he's to the inside of Carl Shedd. He's already clear of Carl Shedd, so he's going to move into the 8th position. He started in 9th. He fell back a little bit, but he's starting to work his way back to the front as he's now trying to work on Trevor Rapallo. He's really getting through the center of the corner really nicely at this point, James. Looks like that car is rolling through the center better than just about anybody around him.
Doing a real nice job on corner entry now that we get a good chance to look at it here. You see, especially through center as well. I noticed it this last time by. He just sucked up to the rear bumper of Rapallo in the middle of turns 1 and 2 and just made it stick. So watch Eberhardt come. I have a feeling it won't be too long before we see him going after the 24 car of Nick Silver. Clearly is coming, should get the pass completed about Rapallo here. So yes, Eberhardt now going to be up another spot to 7th. Going to go after Silver for 6th, and then it's about maybe a quarter of a straightaway up to Fariniar's in the top 5 spot. So going to have to watch and see what will happen there when teammates go at it.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be very exciting. We've seen these ageless drivers go at it before, and they always seem to put on a really good show. Eberhardt, however, right now, he's got to work on Nick Silver, and he is closing that gap in a hurry. Closing in on that Hot Wheels car. He's got a little bit of a different paint scheme Nick Silver does tonight. Still looks amazing as usual, but he's sporting something different here, and Eberhardt's looking at it thinking, I want that position, and it looks like he's going to try to move to the inside here going into 1. It actually looks like Nick Silver might just be giving that position to him, so move Eberhardt up into that 6th position, and now, as you mentioned, he's got about that quarter of a straightaway he's going to have to run down to catch up to the rest of the top 5 if he wants to start working his way into that. So he's definitely on a march at this point, James. He's worked his way all the way up to 6th after starting in 9th, so very interested to see what he can do if this thing stays green for a while.
Good news for Eberhardt is that once he gets to the 5th place car, his teammate Fariniar is getting to 4th. Won't be that much more work because Jeff Ward is right there on the front bumper of the number 47 machine. Those two have been nose to tail for about 5 to 6 laps now, and Farniar's has been looking for a way underneath the 89 car. Hasn't been able to find it yet, but those two are in a little bit of a battle at the moment, and might take Eberhardt to get up there and break them up to make something happen there. They look really close on speed, but they're just kind of stuck there together, and we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys look like they're doing a pretty good job at this point. I want to update on one of those drivers that started towards the back, David Comstock. He started in that 32nd position. We're having some issues in qualifying. He's up to 24th right now, so he's already climbed 8 positions in just 17 laps. Certainly looks like he's working his way through this field carefully and methodically. And like you mentioned, at this point, James, he's using patience to climb up through here as he's working on the 34 of Sean Boundy now. That would be for 23rd. And we're under caution here at Richmond for the first time tonight.
So those yellow flags that we talked about, the help that you needed if you're DeBarro or, company, you know, you get it here, you get the chance to make it happen. So I think it's a very, very big moment for Navarro and company. Very, very helpful here as we get the replay up for you momentarily.
It looks like the caution came out as a result of the 69 of Corbin Hemstreet. He was racing, I believe that's with the number 19 of Bruce Ackerman, and they made some pretty heavy contact off turn 2. They got into each other coming off the corner, and Hemstreet got turned hard into the outside wall. It looks like he's going to have some motor damage and is going to be on pit road for a while getting some repairs done. The 19 as well has some damage that needs to be worked on if he wants to get back into this thing. But we are getting ready to see pit stops here, James, as everybody comes to pit road. And I think the big story here is going to be 4 tires and fuel. I highly doubt you'll see anybody go for 2 tires at this point.
We saw late in the Cup race how many times drivers came in for 4 tires, even if they had only run 2, 3, 4 laps in between yellow flags. So I think you're going to have to be very, very lucky, especially in the sun, to get away with 2 tires. I can see it in the night a little bit where you have more grip, cooler temps, but I think here it's 4 tires, and if you're lucky, you stay out, you cause a little bit of trouble in strategy, throw a few dices out, but for now, it's going to be David Washington leading the 4-tire brigade. It's as you were, it looks like, off pit road. So Washington, then Kalisto, then Jones, and then Jeff Ward comes out 4th, and Fire DRs was the 5th car out there. So nothing too complicated after we get done with pit stops and pit service. Everybody in the top 5 stays in the top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a lucky break for 2 drivers, Brandon Bowie, Anthony DeBar. Remember, they had that contact early on in this race. They were right in front of the leader. And when I say right in front of the leader, they were less than a second ahead of the leader where they were about to go a lap down. So they were definitely about to be in big trouble, but this caution saves them. They're going to stay on the lead lap. But now, as you mentioned earlier on, they have to make up all that track position, James. Right now, as timing is trying to reset, it looks like they're going to be 28th and 29th. Nope, actually, it's still dropping back a little bit here now. They're going to be well outside of the top 30, but they are still in the lead lap, so they have an opportunity to get back into this thing. But, man, they have a long ways to go.
A long ways, but a long time. I think that's the biggest key here. You've got enough world and enough room to get through this field. You can't press the issue. You just have to let it come to you, I think. So we'll watch and see what happens over the course of the next few green flag runs. But in the meantime, I'd like to remind you that tonight's broadcast at the Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking is brought to you by RealSimRacing.com. RealSimRacing.com has a league for every iRacing driver, including the Winston Cup Series on Wednesday nights and the Midnight Thunder Speedway Series on Thursday nights. For more information, you can visit www.realsimracing.com. Still under our first caution here at Richmond. Would like to let you know that Bruce Ackerman was the one who claimed the cause on that last caution, so that's 1 of 2 C's for him this evening. We'll watch and see if that pops up. But just something for you fans at home to keep in the stat book. If you get 2, you do have to park it. So won't want to see him get another one. It will mean the end of the day for him if he does. In the meantime, though, I think biggest curiosity for me as we look at this restart, the way things are going to line up, is now that Eberhardt's got this field together and the gaps have all been closed off, how good can that car be in traffic? We haven't really seen it in, packs of 2. So what should we be looking for out of that number 90 car, Brian?
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting to see if he can make the outside line work. He's going to be restarting in 6th on the outside line. If he can make something work up there, then it's going to be very interesting to see. But I so far in this race, we've seen everybody search for the bottom of the racetrack as quickly as possible. So that's going to be his first priority if that's how it's going to be as they get ready to get back going here. But like you said, he hasn't really been in heavy traffic. Now he's going to be bunched back up. It's going to be very interesting. And he has caught the fastest drivers in the field. So now getting that much closer to the front is going to be a little bit more difficult than when he was working his way through the back half of the top 10. These guys have been up front for this entire race so far, and they're not going to give him that position very easily.
Right, it's up at the front of the field that you really, really have to dig and get your spots. It's not like what David Comstock did on that first run back towards the back of the field there, where he was able to pick off almost a car a lap. Currently runs in the 23rd position, by the way, as we watch for the charge of the number 42 car. But You have to really, really be careful, I think, if you're Eberhard, especially with what happened with DeBarro last weekend, still fresh in everybody's minds. I know a lot of this league was divided on the way that came about, so you got some guys that kind of keep track of that, and some guys that, see what you do, and whether or not it's fair, they will still judge you based on what they see, and it might make it a little bit more difficult for Eberhard to get around if some of these drivers have this impression that you might not necessarily get a clean pass from the rider.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that all these drivers are going to be thinking about. However, when you're out there on the track, there's something, unless your spotter brings it to your attention that that's the car that's ahead of you or behind you, you really don't even think about it. You're just focused on trying to get around the track and get as close to the front as you can. So it's business as usual for a lot of these guys, unless it's brought to their attention. I don't think you'll see too many issues unless they're kind of brought on themselves.
And I think the other most important thing to note is that the most important ledger is the one you keep with the actions done to you and the ones you do against other people, as Washington leads them back to green. Jones there in second gets down very quickly. Very, very clean move from Farniars to get underneath Callisto, who didn't get the greatest of restarts. It's already about 2 car lengths from the 35 back to that little twosome right there, which I guess is a foursome if we're going to be technical, because you've got Nick Silver and Jeff Ward side by side coming down the front straightaway. And Eberhard's still right there, hanging back behind all of them, just waiting for them to maybe slip up.
Yeah, absolutely. He's right behind them. Now he's to the inside of Jeff Ward as they head down the back straightaway, trying to follow Nick Silver through this little gaggle of cars, as Nick is all over the back bumper of the number 47 machine. I'm sorry, this number 97 machine of Lionel Callisto. Almost made contact with him going into the corner just about a half a lap ago. He backs up, though, as Jeff Ward is still trying to hang on that outside line. Doesn't look like it's working out for him at the moment, as he's starting to slip backwards as Eberhard is trying to make his way around him. And that's going to also bring Carl Shedd into the picture, as Jeff Ward is just trying to find a spot on the bottom of the racetrack at this point. However, you look behind him, there's not any room for him to do so, as there's about 5 cars lined up behind him trying to put him back. This is looking like a train that he does not want to be on right now.
Yep, stuck on the outside with no room to get down to the bottom at all. That's absolutely the worst case scenario if you're anybody in this field. You don't want to have cars bunched up behind you, because then that's how you lose 5 and 6 spots, and that's exactly what just happened to Ward, back to 8th now. Meanwhile, Callisto got underneath Fariniars and got past them a few laps ago. Now the 97 car looks like tires have come up to temp, and maybe that car is coming back to life. Might need a few laps to get going, but once he does, it looks like he's got speed underneath the 47 for the 3rd spot as they come out of turn 4.
Oh, and he got a little sideways coming off the corner. He had to lift a little bit to keep the car under control. That allowed for Daniel Eberhard to sneak under Nick Silver, because Nick lifted to try to give the 97 an opportunity to gather it up. And when that happened, Eberhard decided he was going to take advantage of it. He's going to move into that 5th position ahead of Nick Silver now, and he's going to set his sights on Lionel Callisto at this point. He's slowly but steadily working his way back to the front of this field. And looks like he's got a very fast race car at this point, still rolling the center through the corner really well as he closes in on the number 97 as they head to 3.
Looking closely there, here comes Eberhard doing a really nice job just picking these guys off one by one by one. Callisto's car looks like it's a little bit faster now that we've got a few laps on these tires, but I just don't know if it's as fast as the number 90 car, who might be the only car outside of Washington and Jones that has proper speed. Here comes Eberhard underneath Callisto. As I say all that, in turn 3, looks underneath the 97, has got that car bumper to bumper with the Lucky Strike Chevrolet. Not quite there and not quite complete with the pass as they come through 1 and 2, but a yellow flag comes out before we get the chance to sort it out. 7 car is what I'm hearing is our cause for the 2nd yellow of the day. We'll have the replay up for you momentarily, but tough day early for that 7 machine of Nelson Rivera.
Yeah, it looks like he was racing hard with the number 20 machine of A.J. Browning through 3 and 4, and they made a little bit of contact. Looks like Nelson was just trying to make the pass, and he got into the left rear quarter panel of that number 20 machine, kicked him sideways, and unfortunately brought out our 2nd caution of the evening here. It's going to be interesting to see if these drivers decide to come to pit road after just a pretty short run. This wasn't near as long as the first green flag run that we had, less than 10 laps right there. So could be a trip back down pit road. Looks like indeed it will be, as David Washington's going to bring them to pit road. He's going to bring everybody behind him. This could be an opportunity, James, for somebody to try 2 tires. It wasn't a very long green flag run. If they wanted to try it and see if it works out, they still have plenty of time. If it doesn't work out, they still have well over 150 laps, or actually right around 145 laps to go to make it back up.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. If you want to gamble, you can, but it's looked like all week, I think, in the sim, as we've watched the official races, that it's really, really hard to pull off, and you just have to kind of find a way to make it work if you're lucky, but you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot, I think, if you take 2 tires, unless you're running maybe 1 or 2 laps. So here comes Washington, and then Jones, Farniars, Kalisto, and Eberhardt. So same quintet that we had at the front of the field, still on pit road. Nobody's made mistakes up at the front yet, but clean pit stops here throughout 2 yellows.
Yeah, absolutely. It did look like Nick Silver had a bit of a slow stop as he came in 6th, and it looks like he's going to fall back to 9th after that pit stop. So didn't have the pit stop he was looking for. However, we do still have enough laps where he can make it back up. And I want to talk about him for just a moment. If there's anybody that's going to miss this short track swing, it's going to be Nick, because he has had an incredible a couple of weeks running these short tracks. He finished 3rd at Martinsville and then finished 2nd last week at Bristol. He's definitely been enjoying running on these short tracks. I don't know if he's ready to go to Talladega next week. I think he'd rather just keep running these little tracks.
Wouldn't be surprised, but he could also take the momentum from these short tracks and bring it to a place like Talladega, where a little bit of good luck is never going to hurt you, because you never quite know what can happen there. What I think we do know is that Hot Wheels car is absolutely one of the better looking paint schemes within the sim. We can also tell you, since we're talking about paint schemes, that coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by Hippie's Paint Shop. Hippie's Paint Shop has over 5 years of experience providing top quality custom paint schemes for all iRacing vehicles at a low price. Because after all, at Hippie's Paint Shop, the cost isn't high, just the painter. So, got a decent share of impressive paint schemes as you look through this whole field, Brian. So, definitely a colorful series that we have at that. And a lot of fun to see these cars whip about with all sorts of both real and fictional sponsors.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing what these guys are able to come up with, the creativity that these guys have, and then just some of them is just flat out pride, whether it be from their favorite sport or their favorite NASCAR driver or a sponsor that they, or a company that they like to shop at. It's really incredible what these guys are able to come up with. They always seem to have some of the best paint schemes on the service out here on Monday night. So definitely one of the better aspects of our broadcast is getting to show off these beautiful cars every Monday night.
Got examples of that up and down the grid as you look at it here. You know, you've got all the PowerTech drivers, Farniars and Eberhardt and company, all with that real sponsorship, and then some of the fictional ones like Doug Roth with the STP car, and some of the real-life connections too. We know Dwayne Vincent and Parker Store have had a long-standing relationship, and then Gary Mercer Trucking and David Comstock. So a lot of examples of all kinds of different sponsors in this field.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, some of them are actual sponsors. Some of these guys actually have some connections where they're getting paid, or they're having some type of a connection. Like you mentioned with David Comstock, he's got the JT plaques on the side as well. They make custom plaques that are really cool, and whenever he finishes up inside the top 10, they have a discount on those plaques. So certainly something to keep an eye on for him as well. But a lot of these guys have that as an option. You see it more so in the Peak Series, but you can even see it down here in the Monday Night Series as well.
And I know that's one of the fastest growing relationships in the sport. I know Comstock's and the relationship he has with Jonathan Heitzman and the Jensen JT Plaques. So happy to see stuff like that coming up into the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series. And to be fair, I think we'd like to just see more of that sort of thing because of the quality of the racing that we have.
Oh, absolutely. It brings a whole different dynamic to these races when you have actual sponsors that are expecting you to live up to a certain standard and race by a certain standard. It definitely increases the value of the race and how these drivers are willing to approach it. So it's certainly something that would be exciting to see more of. We're starting to see it, as you said, with every year that passes, you see big-time sponsors starting to get more involved with this kind of stuff. We've got Peak in the Cup, or in the DWC series for the top level drivers here on iRacing. So certainly starting to see more and more of those big name sponsors starting to join in with iRacing and really get their names out there.
That's the thing. You can get all the way to Homestead, Miami with this service and with this sim. If you're that good as champion of the Peak Antifreeze Series, you can get your trophy awarded to you on the stage right before the Ford EcoBoost 400 in November, if you are so lucky to be champion. But for us, we're going to get back to RSR action here on lap 41. Green flag is out. David Washington again off the front leads Dylan Jones. Give it about 2 car lengths by the time they get to turn 1. Maybe a little bit less than that. Jones brings it back up, but he might have gotten a little bit loose in the center of the corner, so Washington should be able to pull away. They string out. First battle for position is back in 6. Carl Shedd and Jeff Ward side by side in turns 3 and 4.
Yeah, Shedd's trying to roll that outside line. It looks like he might have gotten a pretty good run off turn 4. He's going to inch ahead of Jeff Ward as they head to turn 1. However, Ward slams it into the inside line as they head into turn 1, almost washes up into Carl Shedd as they work through the middle of the corner. That's going to allow him to take that position away from Carl Shedd and opens the door for Nick Silver to try to look in there. But Shedd's not done fighting as he drives it in very deep in 3, and he's trying to fight back on the outside line. However, so far, James, the inside line is still the fastest way around here. He's just not able to find that grip that he's looking for out there, but he's not giving up. He's still fighting out on the outside line.
Now Ward will clear him, and now it will be Silver's turn to go underneath, and Shedd might end up in the same spot that Jeff Ward was in on the last green flag run, where he gets trapped up top and just doesn't have any room to get down to the inside and get a place in that preferred lane, as we see some cars. Who was that going deep into the corner? That's Thomas George, who just drove it right underneath the 6 car. Austin Coop went all the way down to the apron there on the front straightaway to make that work. So big time pass from the number 20 car, up 6 spots since the start of this race, from 16th to 10th. So nice run for that number 29 machine.
Yeah, absolutely, up inside the top 10, and Thomas George is another one that you have to expect he's going to try to get up there. As we have contact going into 1, Austin Coop got turned around by the 52 of Sean Casto, and we're back under caution here at Richmond. I'm not sure exactly what happens. It looked like Sean Casto might have just got into the corner a little too hot. However, it does bring us out back under caution. You see the replay on your screen. And unfortunate there for the 6 machine. I don't think he got too much damage other than nosing it into the outside wall. Nobody hit him after he came to a stop up on the outside of turn 1. So he got very lucky in that respect, but we're back under caution here.
A lot of damage on the front of the number 6 machine. And yeah, I think I couldn't tell if that was Coop backing up into Casto or Casto over driving the corner. Tough to tell from our camera angles, but contact definitely made between those 2 cars, and Coop ends up the more significantly hurt of the 2. I see a little bit of toe damage as well on the left front of that car, so it might be a few laps in here for repairs as we work this 3rd caution of the evening, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. See a couple of guys that have come to pit road there after that. Actually, looks like most of the leaders have come to pit road. Daniel Eberhardt stayed out, as well as Thomas George and a couple of other drivers, but David Washington and the rest of the top 5 all came to pit road again after a very, very short green flag run. They are on pit road. Looks like they're all going to go for 4 tires once again. Nick Silver, he took 2 tires, and he's going to be the first one off pit road, but David Washington will be the first driver off with 4. So we'll have to wait and see where these guys cycle through once they come back around and hit the scoring line. But going to shake things up a little bit as we have a new leader at the front, Daniel Eberhardt. He's going to stay out there and see what he can do on those old tires.
Nick Silver came out 18th, as we are hearing from race control. So pass that little bit of information on to you as well. Also can tell you that, at least from what I'm seeing, Eberhardt stayed out, Thomas George and Mike Kelly. There might be more, but I'm still waiting to see this field kind of shuffle through pit stops to make sure that they actually are going to stay out on this round. So looks like we should have more than just those 3 cars, but we'll wait a few laps before we actually let the people know and make sure that we get all this confirmed, because we've still got a few cars that have the chance to come down pit road if they so choose.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like as of right now, though, at least the top 15 are all out there on the old tires. Nick Silver is going to be the first one out with tires. It looks like he's in 16th right now. Still, again, like you said, waiting on that scoring to update and waiting to see if any of these drivers elect to come to pit road before we go back green. But right now, it doesn't appear that that is the case, as all these drivers are going to stay out. And this is going to really shake things up, because now we have the drivers that have dominated this race through the first 50 laps. They're going to have to work their way up through this field and be outside the top 15. Now more than ever, James, is when patience are truly going to be a virtue for these drivers. They cannot get a little impatient and start making mistakes. They could end up causing themselves to lose any shot at winning this race if they lose their tempers or if they lose that patience.
Yeah. Could be interesting to see what happens. Not quite sure what we're going to make of this, especially with some of the faster cars in this field kind of buried in the middle now that we've got the field effectively split on tire strategy right down the middle, it looks like here. Should get the one to go before too long here. There you go, lights off on the pace car. So, of the drivers that stayed out, we've got Eberhard, Thomas George, Mike Kelly, Anthony DeBarro, Dwayne Vincent, Jason Jacoby, Keith Medeiros, Doug Roth, and yellow flag is going to come out again here, so we're going to extend it a few more laps. But as I was saying, Roth, David Comstock, Stefan Marinac, Ross Cato, Shane Ewing, Nelson Rivera, Eric Arnold, AJ Browning, the 15 drivers that appear to have stayed out on this yellow. So we talk about patience. It's our favorite word here on these short tracks, and I think for a lot of these guys that have been up on the front of the field, you're about to see a lot of it, because you're going to have to drive through approximately half this field if you're Nick Silver to get back up to where you had been running.
Yeah, absolutely. And this works out for one driver that was involved in an early race incident, Anthony DeBarro. I remember he was caught up with that little bit of contact between him and Brandon Bowie. He was outside the top 30 about 25 laps ago, and as of right now, he's going to be up in that 4th position when they go back green. It does not look as if Brandon Bowie elected to do the same as him, as Brandon Bowie is back in 27th right now. But for DeBarro, this gives him all that track position back and gives him an opportunity to try to get up there and battle for the race lead. It's going to be a very exciting restart, though. I'm excited to watch what's going on back here around where our fresh tire drivers are with Nick Silver, David Washington. I think that's going to be the most action-packed part of this restart.
So, we'll see what happens with all of that. See if we can make it work, make it stick, and get through these next few laps without any trouble. I'm looking at DeBarro's car here at the moment, trying to see if there's a massive amount of damage anywhere else besides the front. He knows that wall right out by turn 4 where pit road begins ever so slightly when he went around very early in this race, so there's that damage on the nose, but for the most part it looks like that 96 car is clean. And this being a short track, you know, aerodynamics aren't necessarily as important as they will be, say, next week at Talladega, but you think DeBarro, if he's got a car that can still handle well, might be able to do something with Eberhard and George.
Yeah, absolutely, and we have to remember that he has a little bit of a rivalry with Eberhard going on. You have to imagine he remembers what happened last week at Bristol. He might have to repay that favor. As we're getting ready to go green, Eberhard's already on the loud pedal as he's gone. We're back under green here at Richmond. Eberhard has gotten clear of this field by about a car length over Mike Kelly as they head to turn 1. Right now the battle is on for 3rd as Thomas George has it. DeBarro wants it as they come off turn 2, and Comstock got a little sideways behind them trying to hang on. He's gathered it up and he's going to lose a little bit of time, but they're still trying to get everybody fight their way to the bottom as they get going here.
George initially was slow to get off the line on the restart and then got his speed back as the lap progressed. And now looks like he'll be in a safe spot. And DeBarro, who looked like he might have a chance to get around George there, all of a sudden is really struggling with that 96 machine. Might be a little bit more damage than we initially thought on that car. That's affecting the pace. Dwayne Vincent's already gotten around for 5th. Jason Jacoby is looking underneath that number 96 car, trying to get the 5th spot. Take that back. Vincent actually in 4th, but you know, just a lot of cars here trying to freight train that 96 car. Something definitely looks amiss from the earlier incident, I think, with DeBarro.
Yeah, but now he has worked his way to the bottom of the racetrack. He was able to hold off Jason Jacoby, and he will hang on in the 5th position for now. Have to wait and see what happens and see. We have one in the grass going down the front stretch. I didn't catch what number that was, but he just went for a heck of a ride down the front stretch there. The number 20 machine, AJ Browning. He was just involved in our most recent caution. Now he's having a little bit of an off-road adventure. We're back under caution, and it looks like the accident happened on the back stretch there. The number 30 of Seth Foudy is around, actually off turn 2 right there.
Foudy in trouble. Replay up for you momentarily. Interesting stuff there. I think I know there are a lot of places to go off-roading around this racetrack, but I didn't necessarily expect someone to go do that this early in the race by him.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very wild ride for the number 20. He got lucky that he didn't tear the front end of that car up by going through the grass. We could have seen that here. As you're going to see the replay of that caution. Seth Foudy had a little bit of contact between him and Austin Coop that turned the number 30 machine around in the middle of turns 1 and 2. A little bit of back end damage for that number 30 car. He's going to have to come in and get some repairs done to it. However, again, as you mentioned, we're at a short track, so the aerodynamics aren't that critically important compared to, like you said, next week at Talladega.
Yep. While the field sorts itself out on this yellow, we'll take our first commercial break of the evening. You are watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing. Welcome back to LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series. Getting ready for the restart on lap 63. Daniel Eberhardt, your leader, the first of about 15 cars that are staying out on old tires in front of your leaders for the majority of this race who came down pit road. We've got the field split into two different strategies. We've got Eberhardt in front, Mike Kelly in second, Thomas George to third, Anthony DeBarro hanging on to that fourth spot, but he's side by side with the 13 of Dwayne Vincent trying to find another position on the bottom as they come down the front straightaway.
Yeah, he's doing a very good job on this restart. He struggled on the last one, but he's moving forward at this point as he's fighting to the inside of Dwayne Vincent still through 1 and 2. Now as he's trying to get that advantage going down the back straightaway. Looks like he's going to have it as they head off into 3. Dwayne Vincent, though, is not going to give up that battle, but it looks like he is going to lose that battle as DeBarro is able to jump up, almost is able to slide up in front of him. However, Vincent does not give that position just yet. We have a big wreck on the front stretch. David Washington is involved, along with a host of our other drivers that were on fresh tires. A big wreck, at least 10 cars stopped on the front stretch.
Big trouble here for a lot of drivers who have played a big role in this championship. David Washington, points leader, involved in huge trouble. That will change the complexion of the points just a little bit more. Looks like it was Eric Arnold who might have gotten loose. Here's the replay, comes up momentarily. No, he got the wall, clipped the wall, and bounced off and caught Washington when he came back across the track. And then the Ross Shapiro car had nowhere to go.
Yeah, that was a huge wreck. As you see, Trevor Rapallo, Sean Boundy, David Washington. It looks like the number 12 machine of Ross Cato got caught up in it. 97 of Lionel Callisto, Joseph Tice, Steve Gottschalk. There were so many drivers caught up in that. And we're going to go on board with the number 92 machine here. Jason Lester somehow slices and dices his way through that wreck, James. How did he get so lucky to make it through that thing? He was at full bore when this thing started and somehow managed to slice his way through here without hitting a single car and not a scratch on his car after it was all said and done.
I would guess Christmas miracle, maybe Christmas in May. I don't know. I'm trying. I mean, that's impressive. I think by any way you slice it. Maybe a little cold trickle action there from the number 92 as well. I really don't know.
That might end up being the move of the race. If he can get a decent finish out of this thing, you're going to look back at that wreck right there and say, this is how you ended up getting a good finish, because somehow he made it through there without hitting anything. Probably the most impressive part of that whole wreck is that he came through cleanly. That was wild, though. But we do need to get back to the big story there. And this was a risk that these drivers that came to pit road were taking by coming in, knowing that some drivers may choose to stay out, James. This really bit David Washington. I think that's the biggest one there that was caught up in it, because he was leading this thing, and now he's out of the race.
Yeah, you look at some of the names that were running up at the front of the field who got collected in this. Washington is one. The other two that jump out at me are the 45 of Carl Shedd and the 97 of Lionel Callisto, who was having a season's best run up to this point. Not going to be a good finish at the end of the day. And all that speed that they had at the beginning is not going to be reflected in the final rundown for those two drivers. A tough night, I think, for everybody all around, because there's just not much you can do. Arnold got into the wall all by himself and bounced off, and it's one of those cases where you just end up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one driver that was in the wrong place at the worst time was David Washington, because he was trying to get clear of Eric Arnold. He had no idea what was happening to his outside. He was just going down the front stretch, and Eric Arnold hit the wall and then came down and clipped that right rear of David Washington. So definitely an innocent bystander for that number 98 machine. Unfortunate for him. He's going to lose some points, as you mentioned, but he does have those 3 wins to fall back on. He's in the playoffs. Not what you want to have 2 weeks in a row happen to you, though, with bad finishes. You want to try to get some type of a rhythm going and get some momentum on your side. And so far, over the last couple of weeks, that has not been the case for the number 98 machine.
I think the one saving grace is that if we've got Talladega coming up next week, We talked a little bit earlier about wanting luck. I think the other thing you can note is that, for the most part, whatever form you've been in, whatever sort of momentum that you have, it doesn't necessarily carry to Talladega because of the nature of the racing. So you might see a chance for everything to kind of get a hard reset next week in that sense. But as we square up everybody and get ready for this restart, they're going to go off, and we're going to go green here for the restart. Lap 71, Daniel Eberhardt gets it done. Again, another solid restart from the number 90 car, and Mike Kelly hanging tough there in second, but Thomas George down to the inside. What a run that 29 car is having. The snap-on machine making it happen on the bottom here. Turn 2, one car around the back straightaway, though. Yellow flag out again.
Another wreck here brings us back under caution. Looks like that might have started with the number 89 of Jeff Ward, along with a couple of other drivers off of turn number 2. That did begin with the number 89 of Jeff Ward. You see, he got really high coming off the corner. He got loose, got spun around, then it gets collected, or actually collects the number 4 machine of CJ LeVere, and also collects the number 33 machine of Douglas Wyatt. So a smaller wreck compared to what we just saw here, James, but still nonetheless it's another wreck to put us back under the caution flag here at Richmond.
And you look at another driver there who was running well and then came in and took tires and ended up in the back of the pack. Jeff Ward was running near the front of this field when we had the split on strategy, and he now becomes the 4th driver that had been up in the top 5 to get wrapped up in some sort of incident and run into trouble here today. So I'll have to admit at this point, if you're one of the drivers that stayed out, you're looking like you made the right decision for the most part.
Oh, absolutely. If you're Daniel Eberhardt, Thomas George, Mike Kelly, any of these drivers up inside the top 10, top 12 at this point, you made the best call you could have made, because you've been ahead of all of this, and you now have a very good opportunity to try to get up there and win this race. And do want to update one driver that we were talking about earlier on, David Comstock. He had his issues in qualifying. He had to start 32nd here tonight. At this point, James, he's up to 8th, so having a very good night. He was one of those drivers that made that call to stay out when the race leaders pitted, and it's worked out very well for him as he's up inside the top 10, looking to try to get just a little bit closer. And also want to mention Jason Jacoby. He started right behind Comstock in that 34th position. He's up to 5th, so both of these drivers having a very good night so far.
So much for the importance of taking time, right? I guess. But we'll watch those two and see what they can do here as we get closer to the midway point of this race. Take a moment, though, while we have a moment under yellow, to remind you that coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim behind the wheel or on the pit box or from the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. You can get yourself a basic download for free or go get the pro version today, both at joel-real-timing.com. Lights are still out on the pace car, working lap 76 of 180, so about 15 laps to go until we hit the midway point of this race. Eberhardt, your leader. Thomas George, I have to talk about this car. He stayed out right behind everybody and has just kept that 29 car up there all night since, or all day since, I suppose, if we're going to be technical about it. But at any rate, 29's in P2. That's definitely a season's best for him. Mike Kelly with another strong run. We know he's not afraid to try pit strategy. We've seen him do it in the past, and the really, really strong IKS machine making it happen here. And you've got DeBarro, who's rebounded nicely after spinning on the first lap. And then, as you mentioned a few moments ago, Jason Jacoby, who has come right up through this field after not taking time. A very, very strong run for all 5 of those drivers so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to Thomas George for a moment. This is by far the best run he's had all season long. I was just looking at his stats on the season, and his best finish so far was 13th back at Daytona, and actually that was in the non-points race at Daytona. His best points-paying finish so far through the first 8 races was an 18th place finish at Las Vegas. So he has not had a good season at all up to this point. This could be the turning point in the season for the number 29 machine if he can close this thing out and get a good run here.
closing it out, though. It seems like it's so critical with all the incidents we've had so far. Pace car is off. Eberhard is off. Green flag is back out again. George, I don't think, got the greatest of restarts. Kelly's going to clear him and go right underneath. So Mike Kelly goes to second before they even cross the stripe. Cars getting into it as they go through turns 1 and 2. Still green as we go, but they fanned out a lot there in the back of the field in the middle of the corner, but up at the front they're all single file almost immediately. No one wants to get caught out on the high side. We've seen what's happened to the likes of Jeff Ward, I think, is the best example from earlier. He's not the only one, though. A lot of drivers have been freight trained just by being stuck on that top side. They don't want to be there. Everybody down to the bottom just trying to clip off laps now at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that initial restart, there was a big moment going off into turn 1 as the number 43 of Doug Roth got into the back of Sean Casto. And when he did, he got hit from behind by the number 47 machine, got kicked sideways and was able to keep it straight. But that could have been a big moment for all these drivers back there as they were trying to get sorted out. We could have had another really big pile up there, but fortunately everybody was able to keep it going. So we're still under green, and that works out for Daniel Eberhard as he is driving away at this point. He's got about a 3.5, almost 4/10 of a second advantage over Mike Kelly at this point. He's taking a little bit of a different approach through the corner, it looks like, James, as he's going to the bottom and then kind of letting the car roll up the track just about a half a groove and then cutting it back down when he comes on corner exit. Taking a different approach we're seeing most of these drivers do.
Yep, exiting lower than most, and it's paying off for the most part. Though Kelly had a better lap that last time around, but you're right, that gap over the last few laps since we got the green flag has increased ever so slightly. So, and I think really jumped out. He looked like he gained a car length on the back straightaway, did Eberhard to Kelly. So, starting to see the 90 car get away, starting to see these cars start to bunch up. I'm looking back here, trying to figure out who's coming around. I noticed that Brandon Bowie is starting to make his way back up to this field. He was involved with Anthony DeBarro in that lap 1 spin and has had to fight his way through the field, as has the car right ahead of him, David Comstock, who did not take time after he scraped the wall and had an issue on his qualifying lap. But those two have been fighting up through the field, and here comes Bowie underneath Comstock looking for a position as they go in turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, absolutely. These two have had a couple of pretty good battles as Comstock gets up into the wall off turn 2. He's going to have to check up a little bit. That's going to open the door for, I believe that's Nick Silver on the bottom. I'm sorry, that was Sean Casto to his inside trying to take that position away, but a scary moment for the number 42 machine. He could have had some pretty heavy damage right there, but he was able to keep that car straight, just got a little bit of contact with the wall, but he's stuck out on the outside now as he's now having to let Dylan Jones by, and he could potentially have to let Marinak by. He's going to try to squeeze into the bottom of the racetrack, but Stefan Marinak's not going to allow it, so still hung out on the outside line. He's going to drop outside of the top 10. At this point, he's back to 12th. Looks like he's going to lose that spot and fall back to 13th now. He's finally going to be able to slot in behind that Marinak machine, but a very scary moment for the number 42. Could have been a lot worse than it was.
And I look right behind Comstock now that he's settled back in line. There's Nick Silver in the 24 car who took 2 tires on that last pit stop and I think came in 2nd or 3rd in that deal and is still running in the 14th position right where he started the race. So the decision to come in not paying off to this point for the 24 machine. The decision not to come in, though, paying off for the likes of George, Kelly, Jacobia. Just looking at this top 5 and looking at drivers who hadn't really been up at the front of the field until they made that call. It's been a pretty big call for that bunch of people. They've all been able to keep it up at the front of the field. So I think what we're learning here is that in some cases, I think especially if everybody decides to at least think about coming down pit road, and it's not necessarily automatic. If you have a split of the field like we did, you want the track position more than you want the tires.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think that was the biggest factor in this. If you'd only had 4 or 5 drivers that stayed out and the rest came in and got tires, I think it would have been a completely different story. But because, as you mentioned, we had about half the field split, decided on what they were going to do, it made it that much more pivotal to be out there on the older tires and take advantage of the track position. So definitely a big moment here for those drivers. As James, we're at the halfway point of this thing, so we're getting ready to kick off that iRacing Midway race break, again being brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. In the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, the Cars Tour, USAC, and more. And as we go through this iRacing Midway race break, Daniel Eberhardt is your race leader, followed by Mike Kelly in that second position. Then you have Thomas George in third. Jason Jacoby is fourth, and Anthony DeBarro is fifth. All these drivers, as we already mentioned, out on old tires, followed by Dwayne Vincent in sixth, Andrew Farnars in seventh, Brandon Bowie is eighth, Dylan Jones ninth, and Keith Medeiros is 10th.
You'll find Stefan Marinak in the 11th position with Albert of the Florida Gators chomping down, but we've got a yellow flag to promptly throw the race break all out of proportion. So hearing that Austin Coop is the reason for this yellow, we'll get the replay momentarily. See a little bit of trouble over in turn 3, and he's got Seth Foudy in the 30 car with him.
Yeah, that actually happened right in front of him. The 30 car, Seth Foudy, got loose off the corner, hit the wall, and then collected the Coop machine off turn 2. And unfortunately, when Coop got collected, he hit the inside wall extremely hard, and it looks like his night is most likely going to be over. And Seth Foudy as well, looks like he might be having a short night as well. I believe that is his second cause caution on the evening, which would mean he'd have to come and be done for the night. I do think we're getting ready to see some pit stops, though, as Eberhardt looks like he's going to lead these guys to the pit road here, James. I don't think you're going to see anybody stay out after that little bit of a run. Looks like everybody's coming this time.
Looks like everybody's going to come and get tires. Seems like a solid call to me. We've had enough cars come down pit road, and we've had enough laps, I think, since we ran into trouble not too long ago to get everybody down on pit road. Just go ahead, get your tires, be done with it, and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eberhardt is the first one into his pit box. Again, I don't think we're going to see anybody take any chances here. 4 tires and fuel will be the call, as Eberhardt looks like he's got a very clean stop going. He's getting ready to be down and away. Should be the first one off. However, we're going to have a little bit of a race right behind him as Mike Kelly, Thomas George, and a host of others are fighting for that number 2 position coming off. It looks like Mike Kelly is going to win that battle, followed by Thomas George, then Jason Jacoby, and then Anthony DeBarro. And it looks like Dwayne Vincent is going to come out right behind them as well. So pretty exciting battle coming off pit road for what could have been second through about 6th. These guys had a really close battle.
Pretty tight. I'd say Jacoby probably the big winner. I think he gained a spot or 2 on that pit stop. Farnars, I believe, dropped 2 at that moment. So a little bit of shuffling here. I think that's really the first time we've had a shuffle on pit road all night. They've been relatively consistent throughout a good chunk of this race on pit road. We haven't really run into issues with drivers losing spots. So curious to see what might have happened with the 47 car and see what happened with the 1 car, figure out why they're shuffling spots here when we come back to the green.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking back now, and it looks like the 47 slid through his box just a hair, had to back up for a split second, and when that happened, it obviously cost him just a little bit of time, and that's going to be the result of him losing just a little bit of ground on pit road. And unfortunately, it's going to cost him a little bit of track position, which we have seen be very pivotal here so far tonight, James, especially if you have the split strategy like we already saw, but more so even when everybody's on equal tires, because it's that hard to pass these guys. You don't want to be stuck back around where he's at right now. You want to be as close to the front as possible.
You want to be in a place where you can avoid the wrecks. I think that's the biggest key here, is that you want to make sure that you don't have any sort of trouble and you don't end up caught in the middle of things. We've seen that happen to some really strong drivers multiple times tonight already. So just keeping your nose out of trouble. It sounds so simple in theory, and yet you get to a track like this, especially on corner entry, where these cars travel so fast for a short track into turn 1 and turn 3. If anything happens, and I think especially if you get caught up on the outside, there's just nothing you can do about it. There's nowhere to go, because these cars, if they get loose and they lose the rear end, you are headed for that outside retaining wall 99 times out of 100.
Yeah, absolutely, and just something to watch out for. And it looks like we're getting ready to line them up and try to get back under a green flag here, as These guys are bunching up double file once again, and so far the lights are off on the pace car, so I think we're going to go back green this time by. We're going to run through the top 10 real quick. It's Daniel Eberhardt, Mike Kelly, Thomas George, Jason Jacoby, Anthony DeBarro, Dwayne Vincent, Andrew Farnars, Brandon Bowie, Dylan Jones, and Keith Medeiros, the top 10. About to go back green, James. It's going to be very exciting here on this restart.
Everybody bunched up 2 by 2 here. Eberhardt gets going again, leaves everybody in the dust. It's already about half a car length back to Mike Kelly, who will slide in behind the 90 car, go ahead and get down to the bottom and not have to worry about that battle. You've got 4 cars trapped up high. Jacoby, and then a few more. Looks like Dwayne Vincent and Brandon Bowie also up there, and they all sort of checked up just a little bit in the corner. Kelly kind of chopped down the nose of Thomas George there, and it almost threw everybody back at about 10th, way up into a frenzy. Meanwhile, we've got cars on the bottom trying to take it 3 wide. Not necessarily successful in that endeavor, but can't fault them for attempting the passes. They're trying to gain as many spots as they can while the field's bunched up.
And DeBarro's having a bunch of issues right now as he's dropping back in a hurry on this restart, and he just almost got turned going off into turn 3. He was trying to hold the inside line as they went through the corner over the number 47 machine, and the 47 went to the apron for a split second but backed out of it and was able to keep things going. But that could have been a big moment. But DeBarro is having a little bit of an issue on this restart as he is slipping backwards. He restarted up inside the top 5, and as it stands right now, he's back to 6th, and he's continuing to slide backwards. Just does not look like he has any speed in that car right now. Not sure what's going on. We'll have to try to get an update on that, but not looking good on this restart so far. However, Daniel Eberhardt's very happy with his car. He's got a half a second advantage over Mike Kelly as they work off turn 4.
Yep, Kelly has been hanging there in second, but he hasn't had the long run pace once we get about 2 or 3 laps on these tires to keep up with the 90 car. George has been there too, and Jacoby might have a little bit more, I think, than we have seen out of that one car. Hasn't really pushed the issue all that hard, but the Domino's machine coming up strong again at a short track here. Been quick when he's run, just struggled to really get a result that matches the speed that he's had in some of these races, and that's been an issue all season long. So might be a good opportunity for him to really notch one up on the board and tally one. We'll try and get around Thomas George here. And then you've got Dwayne Vincent, Dylan Jones, DeBarro, Fariniar has slipped back to 8th now. Bowie has come back up tonight after starting well on the grid and then getting spun on that first lap. And then Sean Casto, currently your 10th place car now. So it's all kind of sorting out here at the front of the field. Looks like they're ready to settle in and go for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And these guys are starting to get spread out. So this could be another long green flag run that we are anticipating as we get through the second half of this race. And you see these guys are definitely throughout most of the top 15. They've gotten pretty spread out. There's a couple of clusters of cars that are trying to battle for position. I think right now the best battle is for that 3rd position, Thomas George, and now the 47 is having a little bit of a battle back there with Brandon Bowie off turn 4. You got loose off 2 that opened the door for Brandon Bowie to make that move to the inside line, and now they are side by side battling for that number 8 and 9 position. Bowie's fighting hard on the inside. He's trying to take that position. However, the 47 is not going to give it to him easily as he still fights back on the outside.
And then drops right back and just kind of slides back on the outside there and gets right back in line. I think everybody's seen what's happened with the outside line, and they just don't want any part of it when you know you've got cars behind you that can cost you 2 to 3 spots. So he does the easy thing, lets Bowie go by. The 44 moves up to the 8th position. Fariniar is back to 9th. We'll see if they can make any sort of charge to the front together here over the next few laps, Brian.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with these guys. Another battle that was happening right before all this happened was between Dwayne Vincent and Dylan Jones. Dwayne Vincent was in that 5th position. Dylan Jones decided to take it from him. So he is one of those drivers that did actually come to pit road when everybody else stayed out, James. He was able to avoid the big wreck, and as a result of that, he's been able to make his way back up into the top 5. So he got lucky, I guess, in a sense that he was not caught up in the big wreck, but it's working out for him at this point as he's getting closer to the front. He started on pole, so he's still got a little bit of ways to go, but he's definitely on his way.
There is speed in that 35 car, and the tire has definitely eventually helped his case, although I feel like he's about the only one that benefited from that. Everybody else ran into some sort of issue. So We'll be curious to see what he does. He's got Jacoby next in his sights and then George, and they're all kind of right there in front of him. So might not be too long before we talk about Dylan Jones in the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. He is on his way to the front. He's closing in on the back bumper of Jason Jacoby right now. And we're hearing that the number 91 machine of Steve Gottschalk blew his motor and is going to be going to the garage. Damage from that big wreck that we had on the front stretch several laps ago. Unfortunately, just was too much for that motor, and he is going to retire. As we have a problem, the number 8 machine is around. That is Randy Yeakum. He's around on the back straightaway, and we're back under caution here at Richmond.
Trouble for the number 8 machine. Randy Yoakum is the reason for the caution. We'll get the replay up for you momentarily, but might have had a little bit of help there as we look at the replay. It was close. I couldn't tell if the tire had gone down maybe in turn 2 and he was just trying to save it on the back straightaway and got run over as a result. I did see though that AJ Browning got caught up in that wreck as well. As the 8 car went around, he just kind of clipped the 20 as the 20 was going by, and both cars ended up spinning out on the back straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one of those chain reaction deals that happens so often on these little short tracks. When something happens, there's so little time to react to it that unfortunately multiple wrecks can happen. However, we have pit stops here coming up once again as Daniel Eberhardt's going to lead them to pit road, followed by Mike Kelly, then Thomas George, Jason Jacoby, and Dylan Jones, the top 5. I think, as we've seen all night long, you're not going to see anybody go for 2 tires at this point. Everybody should be getting 4 tires and fuel. And James, I don't think we'll see anybody take any chances here. It should be business as usual for all these guys.
Business as usual, which means the big key here on pit road, as it always seems to be in the Full Throttle Cup Series, is making sure that you hit your box. We've got the sim handling the actual pit stops themselves, so all you really have to do as a driver is make sure you get everything done right on your end of things. As Anthony DeBarro does play the pit strategy and says, I want the clean air, I'm going to take 2 tires, and gets both of them. Gets first off pit road with the 2 tires. Then of the guys that took 4, it was Eberhardt, then Kelly, then George. Stefan Marinak might have played a little pit strategy as well. See, he's jumped up significantly. So I believe the 25 might have 2 tires as well. We'll get a confirmation on that momentarily.
Yeah, I believe he actually does as well, because when he came into his pit box, he actually slid through, and I believe as a result of that, they made the decision to take 2 tires to try not to lose too much track position, and as a result, it's going to gain them a couple of spots. But just that was one of those mistakes on pit road that they had to make a change to their strategy in order to not lose a ton of time. And we'll have to wait and see how that works out for him, as well as how this works out for the number 96 of Anthony DeBarro, as he is going to be, I think, in one of the worst positions possible, having all these guys on 4 tires trying to challenge him when they get on this next restart. He is going to be a sitting duck, I believe, when they get to turn 1.
You just have to make sure that you don't spin them. I think that's the biggest key. And we've seen some issues over the course of this season already where drivers who have taken 2 tires and then come back out to lead the field to green have spun their tires and packed the whole lane behind them up a bit. So
yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go ahead and take an opportunity to try to get that midway race break in that we started a couple of laps ago, and we had it interrupted by the caution. We're going to just start back from scratch because this lineup has changed significantly since we started it. So we're going to go ahead and go through this real quick. Anthony DeBarro is your race leader as they stand, followed by Daniel Eberhardt in that 2nd position. Then we have Mike Kelly in 3rd, then Thomas George in 4th, and Stefan Marinak in 5th. Again, he's on 2 tires trying to hang on. Then we have Jason Jacoby in 6th. Our pole sitter Dylan Jones is in 7th. Dwayne Vincent is 8th, and then Brandon Bowie is 9th. And Sean Castro rounds out the top 10.
11th belongs to Nick Silver in the 24 Hot Wheels car. Andrew Fariniars is 12th at the moment. Keith Medeiros, nice run up 10 spots to 13th. Scott Simley 14th. Rapallo 15th. Doug Roth 16th. Shane Ewing 17th. David Comstock 18th. Jose Gonzalez 19th. Randy Yoakum 20th.
All right, 21st through 30th, we have CJ LaVere. Then we have Douglas White, CJ LaVere, Jason Lester, AJ Browning, Lionel Kalisto, Steve Gottschalk, Joseph Tice, David Washington, Seth Foudy, and Austin Coop is in 30th.
Last cars running here as we get the restart. You've got Jeff Ward, Carl Shedd, Nelson Rivera, Sean Bounty, Ross Cato, Eric Arnold, Stephanie Lessentine, Bruce Ackerman, Corbin Hemstreet. 39 cars in this race tonight. But back under green, you've got DeBarro out in front. You've got Kelly in second, and then Eberhardt back to third at the moment. Can't get down to the bottom just yet, trying to hang tough on the outside of that number 2 car, the Sarah Kelly Sewell Attorney's Machine. Stuck up there, got a nice run off of turn 4 though, might be able to clear the 2. They're going to be side by side here, I think, for a few laps. The question is, how do the drivers behind these two manage this?
Very good question, but right now the guy that is loving this the most is Anthony DeBarro. Is with this side-by-side racing going on behind him, he's able to drive away. The longer they stay side-by-side, the further away he's getting, so he wants this to keep going. You see a little bit of contact between Kelly and Eberhardt, and now we're back under caution here. Looks like a wreck in the back, and now we have a wreck up front as well. Mike Kelly collects, I believe that was not really sure who that was, to be honest with you. Stefan Marinak, it looks like, got caught up in it. So 2 separate wrecks right there. This is not the one that brought out the caution, but it is one that happened, I believe, as a result of the caution.
Yeah, Kelly lost it. I think he clipped the wall on the exit of turn 4 and then came back down across the track, and poor old Stefan Marinak was just trying to get to the inside of Jacoby and had nowhere to go. Might have seen him coming and tried to avoid it, and then ran into trouble. I will ask, though, how did Dwayne Vincent manage to make it through all of that mess? Because his car was right there when Marinak's came up across the track, and I'd say the number 52 of, believe that was Sean Casto. Yes, it was, who also managed to sneak right past Marinak. I have no idea how they weren't collected up top, but somehow they made it through.
Yeah, absolutely. Another smooth move. We saw that with the 92 of Jason Lester in the earlier wreck, and we just saw it once again, as you mentioned, from those couple of drivers. So a very impressive move, especially for Dwayne Vincent. That was insane how he was able to slice his way through there and not get any contact. But for Mike Kelly, he was having such a good night. He used that pit strategy to get up front when everybody else chose to pit, and he was running well up inside the top 5 for much of the last 60 laps or so. And unfortunately has that issue on the front stretch that's going to at least hamper his night. I don't think he's out of the race, but he's got a lot of damage on the number 2 machine. He's going to be on pit road getting damage fixed for quite a while, and he's certainly not going to get the night he was looking for. Just one of those deals. And how about Stefan Marinak? He had that issue on pit road, had to take 2 tires, and unfortunately that kind of put him in the position he was in to get caught up in that wreck as well.
Just a really weird case of events there all around, I think. And yeah, tire strategy definitely played into it for Marinak, but again, it just kind of goes back to the whole, just don't beat yourself in this game, and you've got a chance. Because so many drivers tend to find a way to do that over the course of an evening. You can save yourself if you just execute and hit your marks. So, while we have a moment, we'll take a moment to remind you that coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking is brought to you by iRacing, the world's leading online racing simulation. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. For a limited time, you can visit iRacing.com/World of Outlaws and take advantage of exclusive promo codes to get yourself on the sim with a 1-year membership for half the price. So, if you haven't had a chance to go test out the dirt track yet and test out all the dirt action, I know everybody here at LSRTV and our friends over at Race Spot got together that first night of dirt and had ourselves a bunch of fun with some sprint cars. It's a pretty impressive setup that iRacing has come out here with, Brian.
Oh, absolutely, and they actually just released the USAC sprint car as well, the wingless sprint car, and they announced that they're bringing the Knoxville Speedway to the service here in the very near future. They have their scanners out at the track working on that, and they're expecting hopefully a midsummer or late summer release of that track. So another one for us to look forward to here in the coming months. the dirt racing has been a lot of fun. As indeed, I've gotten an opportunity to run a few races, and it's insane how good of a job that iRacing did with dirt. I know everybody was looking forward to it for so very long. I think I can safely say that everybody here on iRacing can agree it was worth the wait because they did an incredible job.
A lot of fun, and I figure that release date for Knoxville will likely coincide with, or be somewhere near, the 57th running of the Knoxville Nationals for the World of Outlaws, to be held on August 12th at Knoxville. So, biggest race for the sprint cars in the season. I know iRacing will probably have some big plans for that, and for some other tracks too, as we roll through this calendar year, and the World of Outlaws Sprint Car Championship and the Late Model Championship as well. Caution's going to come out here for another lap. Can also mention, while we're talking about dirt, you can catch the World of Outlaws Super Late Model Series on Sunday nights at 8:30 here as well. So if you want to see a little bit of dirt tracking on the sim, and especially dirt tracking maybe more in the style of big body stock cars as opposed to your wing sprints that have the propensity to just fly around some of the nation's greatest dirt tracks, you can see that here.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be a very exciting show every Sunday night at 8:30. It's going to be incredible, and we're going to have ourselves a good old time there watching those races and being a part of them as well. We're about to go back green, though. Anthony DeBarro is your race leader, and how about this? He's got Daniel Everhart his outside. We've seen these guys have a little bit of issues, especially last week at Bristol. Let's see if they're going to renew that rivalry. Pace car is in. DeBarro is down and away. And Everhart trying to get on up to speed as well. He did not get a very good restart. He's going to get stuck out on the outside line as Thomas George is going to be able to slot his way to the bottom in turns 1 and 2. He's going to try to get that run off the corner, but it looks like Everhart's going to have a little bit of an advantage as they head to 3. He will be able to clear for that position. He's going to move into second and now sets his sights on his friend up there at the front, Anthony DeBarro, as they come off turn 4.
Just as they were last week. Maybe a little bit earlier on in this race than they were in the Bristol race, but Everhart has not, at least to what I've seen, had any issue with any of the other drivers all night long. Been a very solid race from him in that department, but I have no doubt that Anthony DeBarro knows who's behind him and remembers what happened last week, and as far as he's concerned, he will not want to let that 90 car by. Might get a little bit chippy here at the front of the field. We'll have to wait and see, because Everhart looks like he's got the faster car at the moment.
Yeah, he does at the moment. He's getting through the center of the corner so much better than DeBarro. You got to believe the 4 tires are certainly playing a factor at this point. However, it's one thing to catch a driver. It's another thing to pass. He's going to make that attempt at the pass right now as he goes to the bottom of the racetrack in 1. DeBarro does not give him an inch as he tries to cut him off. He wasn't able to do it. DeBarro's to his inside as they come off turn 2. He's now going to give that position, and we have a caution on the back straightaway. Thomas George is around, so that solid night he was having looks like it's going to at least get slowed down. No damage on the 29 machine. He just got kicked sideways after contact from behind from the 35 of Dylan Jones. He got very lucky. He did not hit the inside wall, and nobody came in and hit him, so he's going to be able to get 4 tires and get back up there, but unfortunately that takes all that track position away from him. James, he's going to fall all the way to the back.
As we look at the replay here, I think George was already a little bit loose when he got out of the exit of turn 2. I saw him fighting the car with that steering wheel on corner exit, and then Dylan Jones was just kind of there, and I couldn't check up in time and just kind of finished off what George already started, trying to get back to the gas a little bit too early. So you're right, though. Tough break for Thomas George, who had been running so well up to this point, and now will go back to being the last car on the lead lap, which right now puts him in the 19th position. So, gonna be tricky, I think, for him to get back to where he was. He'll need cautions and help, I think, in order to get back up there. But Daniel Everhart back in the race lead. DeBarro second. These two have a little bit of a history from last week, and they've kept it clean enough so far. Though DeBarro definitely went for the block. I think he's still mad enough at Daniel that he's not afraid to throw a rear bumper, I guess, at the 90 car, if that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I certainly think if you see these guys racing hard towards the end of this thing, it's going to get very interesting because, as you mentioned, DeBarro did not forget what happened last week at Bristol. And he certainly had his issues with Everhart in the past, so something else that he's not going to forget about. And now he's got the opportunity to do it as we're inside the last 50 laps of this race. Wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of contact between these two. Just a little friendly reminder of what's going on, but it's just one of those deals. You get a couple of guys that are a little upset with each other. This is the place that you want to settle it. You don't want to do it next week at Talladega. Do it on the short track where you guys can beat and bang a little bit, and it's all in fun and games. Next week's not going to be the place for that at all, as they're going to be focusing on trying to not wreck at Talladega.
Well, you could do it next week if you want to try, I guess.
May not turn out too well though.
You could go high in a corner and just gently cut down across the rear bumper and hope that if you're in the corner that they'll just kind of slide to the outside. But it's not something that most people try for good reason, because 9 times out of 10, if you try something like that, cars that end up in the fence on the outside come back down on you, and then your day is ruined as well. So not necessarily something I think that a lot of these guys are going to want to try, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those deals. But Talladega is going to be so exciting next week, James. I am so excited about going there and calling that race, because it is going to be probably the most exciting race we've had for this season. These guys are going to be drafting out there. We're going to have a new draft package that they didn't have when they were at Daytona. So they're going to have a little bit of a different package to work with, which is going to change how these guys are able to race. And it should be very exciting in its own right, just because it's Talladega. You're going to have 40 cars bunched up within about 2 seconds of each other for most of the race until they have the big one. If they have the big one, it's going to be absolutely insane.
The longest track in NASCAR, the longest super speedway on all of planet Earth, and one of the wider tracks too that we go to. I think we can't forget that. You could easily run 3 wide there. It is all about the glorification of speed, I think, at the wonderful little racetrack about 30 minutes to the east of Birmingham, Alabama. But we're here at Richmond right now. We've got a restart to tackle. Lap 137 is when we're going to get it. Eberhardt and DeBarro, our little twosome from Bristol from last week, are back here up at the front of the field. They will be the ones to lead the field to the green. Here goes DeBarro. Well, did he ever get a restart? Did Jason Jacoby ever follow behind the 90? Jacoby's going to look to the bottom, try and make it happen. He thinks better of it, but Jacoby's there. And then Eberhardt got a little bit loose in the corner, and we see guys going up the hill behind him. Everybody fanning out at 1 and 2, just trying to sort themselves out. Now, here comes Eberhardt. Got a really good run on the back straightaway. Jacoby had a chance for a moment, but Eberhardt looks like he's beginning to pull away.
Hearing there's a little bit of an issue with the 24 Nick Silver. Looks like he's got it all settled out now as he's trying to work on the number 52 of Sean Casto as they head off into turn 1. And now hearing number 44 Bowie is having a little bit of fun as well. Right in front of him here, as a matter of fact, he's fighting with the 47 of Andrew Farnars and Sean Casto right there as well. These guys racing hard coming through the field at this point. And then look right behind him, you've got another little gaggle of cars as it looks like David Comstock, Doug Roth having a pretty good battle. That's right around the 10th position. Comstock trying to fight back towards the front. After starting in the back, he's right now in the 10th position, or actually in the 11th position, fighting with Doug Roth.
Right there, and you've got all sorts of cars just kind of stuck in that little spot right there. You've got Doug Roth, Comstock, Jose Gonzalez, Thomas George trying to make his way back up through the field. Now underneath Gonzalez, trying to go claim the 12th spot, has it easily, so he'll go after Comstock. You got Roth there having a pretty solid run by his standards, up in the top 10 now. A good points night for him if he can hang on to that. Same can be said for Shane Ewing, who currently runs in the 9th position. Silver's got a little bit of damage from all the incidents we've had, but still holding on to a top 10. And then you've got Casto and Farnars right there in front of him too. So solid runs here for a lot of those guys right in that area, but Eberhardt's still leading the field. Jacoby has settled into his spot. The gap hasn't really jumped up all that much. He's running times about equal to Eberhardt's, but there is enough of a gap that Eberhardt's got a little bit of breathing room to work with if he wants to try and start clicking off a rhythm and laying down some laps here.
Yeah, he's got himself about a half a second advantage over Jacoby. Jacoby looks like he might be closing that gap just a little bit. He's been able to edge a little bit closer. He just cut off about a half a tenth that lap, so certainly starting to make some time on the number 90 machine. And this is the best we've seen Jacoby run for much of this season, as he's getting closer to the front here as we get down to the end of this thing. It would be very exciting to see him get up there and try to challenge for a victory here tonight. DeBarro hanging on pretty good though, James, with those 2 tires. He only fell back to 3rd on that initial restart. He had a really bad restart, but he did not lose a ton of time other than falling behind Jacoby. He looks like he's done a pretty good job at holding off Dwayne Vincent at this point. Bowie and that number 47 machine right behind them as well, just trying to find their way around him, but Dwayne Vincent has not been able to do so as of yet.
Looking, but finding nothing. Jacoby's cut it down by a few hundredths of a second, but that won't be enough, even though we still have about 35 laps left in this race. Gonna need to pick up a little bit more speed than that if you want to be able to get up to Eberhardt and challenge him for a victory. DeBarro's found his way back up towards the front as well. Probably the best rebound of the night from anybody after the way last week ended for him and the way this race started for him. He nosed it down to the apron wall by turn 4 and had to rally from the back of the field up to this 3rd position where he runs now. So very nice recovery job from DeBarro. Looks like he should be in line for a strong finish, and he'll tell you it should have happened last week too, but I think he'll be happy with notching one if he can just cross the finish line here where he is.
Yeah, absolutely. He's sitting in 3rd, and his return to this Full Throttle Cup Series in general has not been good. He has not finished a race as of yet without being involved in some sort of an incident and having a good night ruined for him, and he's about 30 laps away from that finally changing for him. Sitting in that 3rd position right now, he's still holding off Dwayne Vincent. Almost looks like at this point he might be holding up that 13 machine. However, Dwayne has just not been able to find his way by him. He gets a good run off the corner, but he just can't get to his inside, and that remains true still as they come off turn 4. He gets a good run up off the corner. Looks like this time he might have the momentum. He will. He's going to look to the inside of DeBarro. DeBarro almost makes contact with him. I think he might have made contact with the number 13 machine, trying to get clear to the bottom. He cuts Bowie off, but he's able to get in line. However, Bowie is going to try to dive it in there in 3. DeBarro throws the block and is able to hang on. So he's definitely racing hard at this point. He knows he's running out of time, and with those 2 tires, he's going to fade pretty quickly if he gets hung out.
That was a gigantic elevator drop of a block from DeBarro. He came down about 3 lanes on corner entry in turn 3 there that last time around just to make sure Bowie didn't get underneath him. Will he try it again this time? No, because Bowie won't try to make the move this time. Going to regroup here for another lap and see if he can get DeBarro somewhere else on this track. Meanwhile, while they're doing that, Vincent's beginning to separate himself as DeBarro throws the block on Bowie again. I think Vincent will be okay. It's DeBarro and Bowie that we have to watch out for. That's the eye of the hurricane at the moment.
Yeah, Bowie looks to the inside again as they work the 3. This time he's able to get his nose underneath DeBarro. DeBarro, however, is not giving him an inch as they make contact off turn 4. DeBarro trying to do everything he can to hang on. He's not going to be able to do it. He tries to fight to the bottom again. However, Andrew Farnars is not going to have anything of it. He forces his way to the bottom as they head through 1 and 2. Now down the back stretch and into 3. The number 47 still hanging on, almost makes contact with DeBarro, and somehow DeBarro was able to get back in front of that 47 machine. I don't know how he was able to pull that off, but he did it, and now he's throwing the block again down to turn 1, but the 47's got the position as they head through the corner.
It is a combination of old tires and trying to hang on with everything he's got. If you're Anthony DeBarro at the moment, you know these guys behind you have better tires, faster tires. You see Dylan Jones go right underneath Nick Silver and grab a spot, so you can move Jones up to 7th. But DeBarro's fighting and fighting with everything that he's got, not giving any room. I think they make contact. Yep, there they go. They make contact. So Farniars gets into the side of DeBarro, and they all come together. And now here comes Jones. Comes around Farniars, had to check up down to the back straightaway. So Jones got around Farniars after Farniars and DeBarro made contact. DeBarro eventually held on to his spot, but it's Jones with the fresh tires. It's coming underneath the 96 now.
And you can see tempers are flaring as we get to the end of this thing as everybody's starting to get frustrated, and DeBarro seems to be holding everybody up, and you can tell that these guys are getting tired of having to wait on him as they're getting very aggressive with him. The patience that we have preached for the last several weeks, I think these guys have just about ran out of them after 3 straight weeks of running on the short tracks, and we're seeing that for sure here as we get closer to the end. Nick Silver now has worked his way up behind Anthony DeBarro, back up to 7th after falling outside of the top 10 for a little while. he's starting to march his way back to the front. He's also on 4 tires compared to DeBarros 2, so he should have the advantage as he works his way to the back bumper of that number 96 machine. We're going to have to see just how aggressive DeBarros is going to be, if he continues to throw those blocks or if he's going to start trying to heat position. It looks like he's able to hang on right now. But certainly we've seen a very aggressive driver here in the last couple laps out of him, James. He has been all over the place trying to hold these guys off.
It's been 3 weeks of short track racing, plus the way last week ended, plus I think the frustration that you talked about how in most of these races he's had a really fast car, but hasn't been able to come away with a finish that's representative of what he's shown. And I think he's just desperately trying to get one in the column somewhere. And is so desperate that he really doesn't want to give it up, but is willing to pinch drivers and give them absolutely zero room to make the pass, running the risk of maybe making contact like he did with Farniars and getting himself into trouble. I think at this point he doesn't care, especially since we're coming up on 20 laps to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And another driver that's rebounding nicely. He was just caught up in a wreck between himself and Dylan Jones, and that's Thomas George. He's back up to 9th. He's fighting with Farnars for the 8th position. He's on the inside, but that number 47 machine is fighting hard on the outside line, and we're getting late into this race, but I'm noticing that the outside line seems like it finally is starting to establish a little bit of grip. It may not be the preferred groove around this track, but you're able to hold somebody off for at least a couple of laps and try to defend that position. However, Thomas George was able to take that position away, and he will slot into that 8th position. So definitely rebounding nicely there. Sean Casto has a moment, almost gets sideways off 4. These guys are all over the place at this point. You can tell the track is losing grip with every lap that passes. These guys are all just skating around, hanging on at this point.
Just about an oh-no moment for the O'Reilly machine there in turn 4. Got really loose on corner exit. And somehow managed to save it, but definitely not a well-handling car for Casto at this point. And currently holds down that 10th position. And you got DeMara there still. Nick Silver still trying to find a way around him, looking for a spot. And then up at the front of the field, they've taken off from DeMara. You've got a solid gap to Bowie. It's almost 2 seconds at this point. And then Jones is clear by a little bit. And then you've got Vincent, who's got some space there too. Not as much so. See Jones coming up. It's could be a battle here, I think, quickly between Jones and Vincent. And then you've got Jacoby and Eberhardt, who are clear off the front of the field.
Yeah, and how about Dwayne Vincent? He started in the 20th position here tonight, and I think I say this every week about him. He's just such a quiet racer. You don't really talk about him much at all, but when we get to the end of these races, he's almost always right where he needs to be to get a good finish. He may not be up there contending for wins every single week, but he closes these races out better than just about anybody, and he's doing it again here tonight. However, right now he's battling with Dylan Jones, trying to hang on to that 3rd position. Looks like he's going to pull over and let Jones by. Maybe not, as he fights back on the outside line. However, Dylan Jones is going to be able to clear him as they come off turn 2, so Jones will move into 3rd and push Vincent back to 4th. Now he's going to have to worry about that number 44 machine of Brandon Bowie, who is right behind these guys too, just a couple of car lengths back, trying to chase these 2 drivers down and see if he can't get a couple more spots. He's another one, James, that has had a very solid start to the season, just has not been able to get that victory that he would like to see. But he's been fast pretty much everywhere they went, just hasn't been able to close the deal out with a win.
Agreed. Yeah, he's been there at points in these races, but not at the point you need to be there, which is the end. Vincent's got so much experience on his side. You figure he'll probably find a way to keep it up there, so it should be a solid top 5 for that 13 Parker Store Chevrolet. But Jones is the interesting case in all this, because he's right there. He's already cut that gap and split that gap from Vincent to Jacoby in half. So maybe another 5 laps before we see him on the 1 machine. He's coming. I don't know if he's got enough time to get to Eberhardt. It'll be close. 12 laps to go now, but Jacoby could be in for a dogfight here in a few laps.
I think Jacoby will be in for a dogfight here, and I don't think it's going to be in a couple of laps. As you can see, Dylan Jones is really gaining on that number 1 machine. He's going to cut that gap down. It was about half a second the last time by. It's only about 3/10 this time by, so he's almost already back to the back bumper of Jason Jacoby, and he's cutting into that lead on Eberhardt as well, down to just under 1.2 seconds at this point. Again, I agree with you here. I don't know if he's got enough time as we're approaching 10 laps to go. I don't know if he's going to have time with having to fight Jacoby, if he can get around Jacoby and catch Eberhardt at the same time. He cuts another 10th off right there. He's going to have to cut more with just 10 laps to go if he wants to have time to get there. However, he's working on Jacoby now as they're catching a lap car. He's going to try to make the move. He's looking to the outside for a moment. Now he's going to cut back to the bottom and get the run off the corner and try to take that second position away off turn 4.
Pulled the crossover off beautifully, saw the lap car, realized that he just needed to enter the corner high and get down underneath the one car and go low. And all of a sudden, Dylan Jones is there, and he now has about 1 second that he has to make up to get to Eberhardt here, and 9 laps to do it. It might just yet be in the cars for the 35 machine. We might have a pair of Fords battling side by side to the finish.
Yeah, he was 2/10 quicker than Eberhardt right there, so he is closing that gap in a hurry. And this is a big moment for him, trying to close in on him. I think the biggest thing that happened there that helps him with this opportunity is that he was able to get around Jacoby without much of a fight at all. He was able to use that lap car as a pick and make that crossover move and was able to easily work his way around him. And now he closes out almost another full 2/10 on Eberhardt as he gets around the lap car machine right there coming off turn 2. That was a 33 machine of Douglas White. He was able to work by, but he is closing that gap in a hurry, James. It's already down to just around a half a second as they come off turn 4. I think it's just a matter of time before he's battling for the lead.
Corner entry now down to half a second for Dylan Jones. He might just have enough time to pull this off. 6 laps to go. Needs to click off about a 10th a lap to make it happen and go get this win. I think he'll at least be at the rear bumper of Eberhardt before we get to this. And you have to watch. I think corner entry is really where he's making it up, especially in turn 3. That car just sucks down into the groove and gains so much time. It's down to 37/100ths of a second now, getting ever so closer. Here comes Dylan Jones.
As they head off into turn 3, he drives it off into the corner. He's down to a car length behind Daniel Eberhardt as they come off the corner. Now he's right on the back bumper. Eberhardt got loose off the corner. That opens the door for Dylan Jones to get right on him as they head off into 1. He swings the car wide in the middle of 1 and 2. Looks like he's going to try to get that good run off the corner. He gets a really solid drive up off the corner, but not able to capitalize on it. He's going to have to try it again down here in 3 and 4. He's moving up the track, trying to find some momentum. Now he goes to the outside for the race lead. They're side by side. Here they go at the start-finish line. Eberhardt trying to hold the bottom.
Got loose, I think, there on corner exit, so he's going to try and rebound and do it again. 3 laps to go. Here comes Jones. Looks for the crossover again. One more time. Is he going to try and get a run in the corner? No. He'll try and pull the crossover again here in 3 and 4. Get that run off the bottom. No. Eberhardt's going to block the bottom and keep him high. That could be enough for Eberhardt because Jones has not been able to get a solid run up the top side, but here he is. He's alongside the 90 car for the moment, but Jones wants the bottom. You can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. As he's still trying to make the outside line work. I think Eberhardt has made it perfectly clear. You're not going to the bottom to make this pass. You're going to have to go around me on the outside. And he is trying to do that now as they come to 2 laps to go. He made it to the outside bumper, or outside of the number 90 machine. Just cannot make the pass like he's looking for. He goes wide in 1 and 2. He's falling back this time as he's not able to get there. But now he gets the run off the corner and he's back to the outside of the 90 as they head to turn 3. Coming to the white flag. They're going to have one more time to try to make it happen.
One more shot to go. 1 lap left to settle it. White flag out at Richmond. Here comes Jones on the outside of Eberhardt. They go into 1 and 2. Jones gets a decent run through the corner. Eberhardt sitting there, but Jones should have the drive off the top side. Is going to stick it up there, try and make it work. Not quite there yet. In turn 3 now. Here comes Eberhardt down to the bottom. They're going to be side by side at the start-finish line. When they come to the checkered flag, it will be Eberhardt by inches over Jones. I'd say that counts for some pretty good short track racing now, doesn't it?
That was incredible. These guys put on the best show we've seen all night long, side by side for much of the last 5 laps, and Dylan Jones committed himself to that second groove and came up just about a half a nose short of getting the victory right there. Unofficially, he was 18/100ths behind Eberhardt at the line. Not quite a photo finish, James, but it's about as close as you could be without it being a photo finish. That was incredible.
A super tight finish. Eberhardt, Jones, and then Jacoby, Vincent, and Bowie, your top 5 tonight at Richmond. We will be back after this commercial break with your full field rundown and post-race interviews. You are watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
There are 3 different paths if you want to call yourself a world champion of sim racing. NASCAR, open wheels, or endurance racing. But no matter which one you take, you can guarantee that the journey will always be tough, which few will ever complete. The iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, the premier road racing series in sim racing, started with a new car taking center stage. Then, it was Martin Kroenke resisting any challenge thrown at him to break the 5-year stranglehold of Gregor Hutu as being world champion. These drivers and teams are not just competing for pride, they're competing for money. And with over $20,000 in prizes for each of the series up for grabs, drivers really do put it all on the line.
The NASCAR Beginner Series powered by iRacing is the premier NASCAR eSports series featuring the cars and tracks from the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. The 2016 campaign saw a return to the top of the mountain by Ray Alfalla as a 3-time Oval World Champion. The march to that championship was not easy though, despite the fact that Ray Alfalla took home the most points in series history. It just also happened to be the tightest championship fight we had ever seen. These guys are set for the 2017 campaign.
The Blancpain GT Series hosts the top GT3 endurance teams in sim racing, with groups of 3 or more drivers sharing the wheel. This is a championship you can't win alone, and you need the same determination, passion and drive from your teammates to be successful. They often say that it takes just one mistake to lose a championship, and in team racing, it may not be your mistake that costs you the win. Last season, VRS Coanda Simsport won the championship by a single point. This year, who will step up to the plate?
These are the iRacing eSport World Championships, the pinnacle of sim racing competition. Catch it all season long with live coverage on iracing.com/live.
Welcome back to coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking here on LSRTV, where round 9 is in the books here at Richmond International Raceway. Daniel Eberhardt is your race winner 2 weeks in a row from the number 90 car. And with that, we're going to go ahead and run down through the field and tell you where your favorite driver finished this evening. Eberhardt gets his second win in as many weeks, beating Dylan Jones in a side-by-side finish at the line. Jones comes up second. Jason Jacoby records the season's best finish of third. Dwayne Vincent brings it home in fourth. Brandon Bowie rounds out the top 5. A strong run finally turns into a good finish for the 44. Thomas George had a really good car, got turned around, then rebounded and made a solid run of it. Got fixed. Nick Silver up in the top 10 all night, comes home with the 7th. Andrew Farniars finishes 8th. Doug Roth with a solid run for the 43 car in 9th, and then David Comstock had to come up through the field. Probably not quite the finish he wanted, but still a top 10 in the 10th spot for the number 42.
How about that for David? Scott Simley finishes in the 11th position here tonight, and then Sean Casto will finish in that 12th position. Then we have Jose Gonzalez in 13th. Shane Ewing finishes 14th. Anthony DeBarro, after trying that two-tire strategy, it did not work out for him towards the end of this thing. He fell all the way back to 15th. As this race concluded. Mike Kelly will finish in the 16th position. Then we have Trevor Rapallo in 17th. Lionel Calisto is 18th, and he was the last driver to finish on the lead lap here tonight. Douglas Wyatt is the first car one lap down. He finishes 19th, and AJ Browning finishes 20th, 2 laps down.
The 92 car, Jason Lester, got into an issue really late, finished 21st, 3 laps down, and then everybody from here on back ran into trouble at some point in this race and had damage, and either was running very slowly at the end of the race or out of it altogether. David Washington got caught up in a very early wreck and just had to kind of settle for 22nd, rode around for the second half of this race, but didn't have a car to contend. CJ LeVere finishes 23rd. Randy Yoakum spun around late, finishes 24th. Joseph Tights in the 5 car came home 25th this evening. Keith Medeiros in the 51 machine finished 26th. 27th belonged to the 7 car of Nelson Rivera. Stefan Marinac got clipped by Mike Kelly at a late race point and a late race yellow, and just ended up parking it from there, finished 28th. Austin Coop finishes in the 29th position, and Sean Boundy rounds out your top 30.
And Steve Gottschalk was caught up in the big wreck on the front stretch. He was able to continue, but he had a blown motor. That took him out of the race and made him finish in the 31st position. Right behind him was Seth Fowdy in 32nd. Then we had Ross Cato in 33rd. Jeff Ward finishes 34th tonight. Carl Shedd, one of those drivers caught up in that big wreck as well. He finishes 35th. Then we have Eric Arnold in 36th. Stephanie Lessentine is 37th. 38th goes to Bruce Ackerman. Corbin Hemstreet is 39th. That is your 39-car field here tonight at the Richmond International Raceway. We concluded with Eberhart getting the victory, and for you, James, you're down in victory lane with the driver. He wins 2 in a row here, winning last week at Bristol and tonight at Richmond. You've caught up with our race winner.
I've got a race winner. I've got a back-to-back race winner. I've got one Daniel Eberhart here with us in victory lane at Richmond. And Daniel, I think we could all say the finish was impressive. I guess my biggest question is, had you seen Dylan Jones pull the crossover in your rearview mirror and known that that's what you needed to do to make sure he didn't get around you was block the bottom, or did you get word from your spotter that that is what has happened and that you needed to run down there to keep him behind you?
Well, we kind of raced together all week, and we were learning the track together, and I figured, I was like, well, I was waiting on the crossover. I told him that. I was like, dude, I was waiting on you to pull the crossover, and he said, well, I just wanted to try to see if I can make the outside work, and he was doing it. I probably couldn't. If we had 2 more laps, there was no way I was going to hold him off. I wasn't blocking the bottom. I was having a late exit because he was on the outside, and I knew he was going to get a run on the outside, and I wasn't, trying to block the bottom. I wanted us to race it out how we did, and it was fun. And about 15 to go, I was sitting there, and I was looking, and I was watching the tenths go down, and I was like, man, he's catching me. And about that time, I just started slamming the throttle off the corner, just spinning the tires down the whole front straightaway. It was probably costing me, but I was trying to drive it as hard as I could. I was out of breath at the end of this thing, trying to, just work the steering wheel and work the throttle. And I thought, honestly, guys, he was going to get me.
How tough is it for you as a driver in the lead, especially since we haven't really had a case like that this season, when you've got the lead, but somebody's coming, and you're getting down to the end of the race, and there's not really much you can do? What's that feeling like? Can you describe it for the folks at home?
You kind of have an empty stomach. You really just watch your relative, and you're watching your rearview mirror, and you can just see that car getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's your teammate, and he's not going to get up there and give you a bump. If it was somebody else, I would expect, to get moved out the way. But we were going to race it out like that, and that's the good thing about having so many teammates in this league and having so many friends in this league. We can all race each other real clean, and that's what you get is a good show like that, running side by side for like 3 laps straight. And Dylan's a great driver, and I really expected him to pull this off tonight. Him or Dave Washington, they were the class of the field all week long in NIS and A-Fixed races, and they're really great friends, and they taught me a lot this week, and it really comes down to that. Dylan had one of the best cars. I think if Dave didn't wreck out, it would have been them 2 doing that right there and not me and Dylan, but I was very grateful to be in this situation tonight to try to get this win and make it 2 in a row.
So you've got that 2 in a row now, and now we head to a different place. We head to Talladega, and I would say you could maybe carry some of the tactics from here over to Alabama, but it doesn't really work like that. So how do you gear yourself out of the short tracks and into a super speedway mentality over the course of this next week?
Well, nobody really knows this except my teammates. I fall in love with Talladega and Daytona. It's a track that I love racing at because it takes a certain kind of skill there to run Talladega and Daytona. You have to play the draft. You got to know when to make the right moves, and sometimes you just got to ride in a pack for a little while. But hopefully next week we can get all our teammates up there and kind of guard this thing up and kind of try to dominate Talladega. It's going to be hard, though, because you sometimes can get the third lane working. It's harder to do that in the Sprint Cup car, but we're going to see if we can do it next week and try to make it 3 in a row.
For that 3 in a row run, you'll have a lot of support. Who do you need to thank for making all of that possible?
I got to thank PowerTech Racing, Carl Shedd, Andrew, Bruce Ackerman. Then also I got to thank Aegis. That's Joseph, Andy, Dave Washington, Dylan Jones, and Trevor Rapallo. And I got to thank Ross Cato, guy stuck with us all throughout this season. And I got to thank my girlfriend. She's kind of a good luck charm, I guess, because she sits here beside me while I practice, and then I kind of send her on her way so I don't have anybody in my room while I'm racing. And I got to thank the good Lord above for letting me do this each and every week.
Got a lot of troopers there, it sounds like. Well, we'll see you in 1 week in Talladega, but congrats on the win tonight, Daniel.
We'll try to get it done next week.
So that's Daniel Eberhardt, who goes back-to-back. Believe he might be the first to do that this season. So big-time run for, well, second after Washington, rather. But still, you've got a lot of power there in that PowerTech Ford. And from the PowerTech team, we're going to slide right on over to another Ford and the Dylan Jones. Brian Macklin is going to be caught up with the number 35 here momentarily.
Yeah, I've caught up with our second place finisher, driver of the number 35, Dylan Jones. Dylan, absolutely incredible battle between you and Daniel Eberhardt at the end of this race. Take us through that last couple of laps. That was insane for us to watch. I can only imagine what you were going through in the driver's seat.
Oh, yeah, that was a great couple laps. How the race went for us, I didn't think we'd end up in that position. We had a lot of ups and downs through the race, and it was a big-time wreck avoidance race for me. I think I made it through, 2 wrecks that were right in front of me that probably should have took me out right away early. But yeah, at the end there, we were trying our hardest to get him, but trying to stay clean, and he ended up getting the W.
Yeah, and earlier on in the race, there was an interesting a pit call for you guys and a bunch of different drivers. Actually, Eberhardt was on the opposite end of that pit strategy. Earlier, but before halfway, we saw a mixed bag where half of the field decided to stay out on old tires, and the front runners, including yourself, decided to come in and get fresh tires. When that happened and you were outside of the top 15, were you at all concerned with being back there in that traffic, especially after that big wreck happened that took out David Washington and Carl Shedd and a host of other drivers? Was there any concern at all that might not have been the right call for you guys?
Oh, yeah, there was some instant regret on that call. It was kind of sketchy out there. There were guys sliding around quite a bit on corner exit, and it was kind of scary back there. I definitely wish we would have stayed out with Eberhardt, and I'm sure a lot of other guys wish the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the final week of our short track stretch. We've had 3 back-to-back weeks of running on the short tracks, and next week we're heading to Talladega, a completely different beast from what we've done the last couple of weeks. What are your thoughts about heading to Talladega next week?
I don't know. I mean, we did really good at Daytona, Aegis as a group, obviously, so we're hoping to do that again in Talladega. But as always, it's another big-time luck game there. One wreck and the whole team can be taken out in one little swoop. So, yeah, I don't know. It depends how the race goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a very exciting race. And as you mentioned, you guys did really good in Daytona as a team. So we expect to see more of that teamwork again next week at Talladega. However, before we let you go here, Dylan, just want to give you a chance to say thank you to your sponsors and say hello to any friends or family that might be watching. Who makes it happen for you on the number 35 machine?
Just give a big thanks to you for Julio and Aegis for putting this team together. It's been a lot of fun with everyone. Andy, Dave, Carl, Andrew, Joseph. I can't even remember them all, but it's been great working with them all this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Congrats on your finish here tonight, Dylan, and we look forward to seeing you next week at Talladega.
Thanks.
All right, that was Dylan Jones. He finished second here tonight. He's looking to repeat that again next week at Talladega. I'm going to slide over here just a little bit and talk to our third place finisher, driver of the number 1 machine, Jason Jacoby, who also had a very good night. He started back in the 34th position, comes home in third. Jason, congrats on your good finish. Take us through your night and how you managed to come from so far back to get such a good finish.
Thank you so much. I got really lucky there in the beginning stages. Positions were just coming my way, shout out to my buddy Devin Summers, so I got to mute right here right quick. Let's see here. Anyway, it was a really good run. Just thankful, was, I guess, in the right place at the right time, was able to pick off positions right there. I apologize to Mike Kelly. I know we got into each other on the front stretch, and that caused some action. The super fast David Washington got taken out earlier, so that helped a lot. Dylan C. Jones was super fast. Congratulations to Daniel. One thing I got to mention about Daniel, he let me know when he was going green on that last restart. I'm like, oh man, that probably wouldn't be very gentlemanly if I actually tried to take the lead from him. So he let me know when he was going green. That's why I got such a good run on him to the inside going into one. One last thing, Domino's, thank you so much. Love working there. They got 2 or more medium 2 topping pizzas, $5.99 each. You can get a bunch of other stuff as well. Check us out at Domino's.com or head into your local Domino's and get a large 3 topping for $7.99.
All right, well, congrats on your finish here tonight. And real quick, I do just want to come back to the race here just a little bit. You were one of the drivers that made the decision to stay out before halfway when most of the front runners decided to come to pit road. Was there at all any concern that staying out wasn't the right call, or did you feel pretty comfortable with that call as soon as you saw what happened there?
Oh, great question, Brian. So basically, I when I saw as many guys stayed out behind me as they did, I felt pretty good about it. I honestly didn't know how many guys did stay out, but there was enough guys in my rearview mirror that I felt pretty comfortable with it. One of my plans was, and which actually did play out during the race, was when we got one of those yellows was to stay out, and that moved me from probably about 15th up to 6th, and that was the big one I wanted to stay out on. But at the very end there, that's one I definitely wanted to stay out on and try to keep track position and try to stay up front and maybe go for the win a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, and it resulted in a pretty good finish for you. Before we let you go, I know you already said thank you to a couple of your sponsors. Just want to give you another opportunity to say thank you to any other sponsors you might have and say hello to any friends or family that might be watching. Who else makes it happen for you on the number 1 machine, Jason?
Definitely. We've got the Drill Spill, which is an online sim racing team run by Ashton Crowder, so huge thanks to him. He's got type 1 diabetes, so we put JDRF and AccuCheck and some other sponsors on the car that he painted up, which is the one I'm running. And huge thanks, shout out to everyone watching, especially the ones watching on my stream, but also definitely everyone watching on LSRTV. So thank you guys so much. And shout out to Dylan C. Jones, who did a great job and said his favorite pizza joint up by him in Wisconsin is Domino's.
Well, congratulations once again on your 3rd place finish, and we'll see you next week at Talladega, Jason.
Thanks, Brian. See you guys.
All right, he finished 3rd here tonight, his best finish so far on the season. He's going to try to improve on that when we head to the high banks of Talladega next week, James. And I know for one driver that's got to be looking forward to it is the guy that won back at Daytona. That's Trevor Rapallo. He hasn't had the success that we've seen since Daytona, only 4 top 10s. That was his only top 5 on the season thus far. You got to believe he's very excited to be heading back to a super speedway, maybe try to get up there and notch another victory for him.
It's a chance for a lot of people, and the way plate racing works, you can do so much on that track, and if you haven't necessarily had the best of luck, you can sneak your way to a victory. It's more about strategy than anything else there, and I guess in some ways that kind of makes it a driver's track, just a little bit of a different kind of game, a different one than you play from the short tracks, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely different from the 3 tracks that we were at the last couple of weeks. It's going to be another action-packed event, of course, because these guys are going to be just a couple of inches off each other, running 200 miles an hour for about 95 laps or so. It's going to be absolutely insane. It's one of my favorite places to go to. I can't wait to call the action. I can't wait to go out there and run a few laps as well.
Figure we'll see a lot of action in official races this week, up and down the sim in preparation for Monday night. But we have a full week that we have to wait until we get to Talladega ourselves. Unfortunate, I know, but we'll make do, and we will look for you here this time, 9:30, next Monday night for round 10 of the 2017 RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking Season when we visit Talladega. That'll conclude our coverage on LSRTV for tonight. So, for my colleague up in the booth, Brian Macklin, for our producer, Cisco Scaramuzza, John Abbott, Chad Cole, and the admins at Real Sim Racing, and for Laura Lawson, Andy Kessler, and Evan Prosoko at LSRTV, I'm James Pike. Thank you for watching tonight's broadcast, and we will see you from Talladega next Monday night.